Alaikum Salam, Black Mind. Further to our discussion in terms of African Americans are not the first people to be in this state. One of the things that we have to realize is that in Islam, we're taught that every people have been sent a messenger that could communicate to that particular people and to their language, right? So prophets, peace be upon them all, to provide people with good tidings, and also to serve as warners. And if you look at this particular region in general, or what you call the Middle East, and a lot of people would think that having a bunch of messages come to you is a good thing, but it's more of a mercy. So the reason why there were so many prophets in this particular region is because the people needed that help. They needed that support, right? They were very dysfunctional. So if you look at the Jews of old, they were constantly caught up in shirk. Shirk, for those who are on the outside, is the worship of idol and false gods. And then that shirk will lead them into things, other forms of dysfunction, engaging in sorcery and homosexuality and all other manners of sin, right? So this will be one of the things that lead into these examples. And so in the media, African Americans are constantly compared to immigrant groups that come into the United States. And so what they'll do is they'll put somebody from Pakistan, India, Nigeria, Afghanistan, so on and so forth, people who don't come from developed nations, third world countries, and then they'll pose the question of, well, if I could come from Nigeria 2 days ago, if I can come from Pakistan 2 days ago, why is it that I can outperform African Americans? And what is wrong, with the black community? And then also what happens in the media is they'll take Nigerians and then they'll say, well, if America was racist and it was all about skin color, how can somebody from Nigeria or Kenya come here and make it? And so, unbeknownst to African Americans, is that many of these countries have been ravaged by corruption due to colonial era, and or also by war. And the people that you see coming into the United States more often than not are probably the top 10 or 5% of that particular society, or people who manage to marry expats who live in their particular part of the world before they come to the United States. And so I'll give you guys, again, a couple of examples in the discussion. So we can all start with the obvious. For example, like when you look at Afghanistan right now, America has spent the last 20 years in Afghanistan starting in 2001. And since then, the American taxpayer has paid over $2 trillion to get that country to develop. But for the Afghans, they have a particular state of mind. They practice, it's not even a form of Islam. It's more or less like a Bronze Age culture that they practice, right? It's not Islam in the sense that we would understand it, who are educated or who live in the developed world. And so America has spent $2 trillion plus there. America, the priority when America was rebuilding or helping to rebuild countries like Iran and Afghanistan and Iraq, after the war on terror, what they would do is that they had preferential treatment for the locals to provide goods and services to the United States government. And for many of those locals, it turned them into millionaires overnight, multi-millionaires overnight. And those locals did not take that money really to help develop those nations. They had to take the money outside. And in many cases, it is not because they didn't care or want to help develop the country. The problem that they faced was, at that particular time, their countries did not have the infrastructure and the institutions necessary to manage people who were wealthy and educated, who can help the country. So I've seen it directly, like in Afghanistan, where I had an Afghan friend who achieved this particular type of success, and when he reached out to his people, again, what he saw everywhere, again, like how we get in the African American community, can I get a discount? Can I get a leg up? Can I get a hand up? And since it's a tribal society, right, he was forced to hire a lot of his relatives, which for the most part were non-productive workers and who didn't help the business grow. And so they were just there off the strength that they were family, but there was nothing that they can contribute to the business. And so you would have many family members who will be not only functioning as employees, but also subcontractors, right? And so, so in this capacity, this was trucking. And so you would just have family members siphoning money out of the company, again, off the strength that they're family members, with the ownership not being able to do much about it because of the culture. And when it comes down to African Americans in these particular environments, like the way that we have gangs, right? So these guys have their warlords, they have their tribal factions, and you can't go from one hood to the next, unless you're pre-approved, right? So when you're leaving a certain part of Afghanistan, you got to be cool with the tribe there to get through that part, and so on and so forth from east to west and back, right? And so so it would be a similar trajectory. So they would say that, or their radical groups would claim that they're there to defend the country, but they wreak so much destruction, right? So you would have these so-called groups go in, again, shoot up marketplaces, blow up schools and mosques, shoot girls in the face, for the sake of education, because they wanted an education, right? And so for us, as African Americans, right, our gangs started out particularly in the same way, right? They started out initially to protect the community, but then sad and most unfortunately, right, through forms of colonialism, and other external factors, they went from protecting the community to shooting it up and blowing it up the same way it's happening in Afghanistan, Pakistan. And so even for me, again, when you're, for example, if you're in Saudi, and for those of you who are not in the know, who are not Muslim, we have something called al-Bih in the Muslim world, and it's a chicken place, just like Popeyes and KFC and everything else. And if you go to Saudi, guess what they love? They love fried chicken, grape soda, and watermelon. Take those things, and probably chips Oman. Take those things out of the region, Nando's or whatever. Take those things out of the region, and we will burn this place to the ground. So for us, like I said, again, you're being lied to. You're being lied to as if you're the poster child for dysfunction. So for African Americans, and I don't know how much time, again, Black Mind has, and you like I said, we can sit here and we can break it down. But if you were to get the same investment and support as these other groups of people, the outcomes will be very different. And again, for these different groups, America doesn't have the same relationship with these types of people, right? So remember, the police were designed to do what? Defend property. And what group of people in America historically have been labeled as property? So things are very different depending on where you go based upon the relationship that you have. So again, for example, in the UK, there are Pakistani gangs, right? And those Pakistani gangs are born out of marginalization. And there's a commercial for the British Army where they're patrolling, and it's time for prayer. And so if you told Americans, hey, there's a Pakistani gang around the corner, right, we would laugh you out of existence. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because in America, Pakistanis and Indians are doctors. What? I'm going to get beat up by a bunch of dentists and mechanical engineers, right? So for America, it wouldn't make sense because those groups aren't targeted for marginalization the same way they may be, in other parts, in other parts of the world. And so what I would tell Black America, and man, let me see if I can dig up some photos for Black Mind from my journey. Because what I would tell Black America, you ain't the first hood and you are not the last. Not even close. And for my friends over here, be it Iraq, Somalia, Pakistan, and I say shame on you. And I tell them, and I tell them, shame on you, because you guys come from the same conditions that we come from. In most cases, even worse. Why do you then come to America and then all of a sudden act like what African Americans are doing or what they're going through is something brand new? And I had a conversation with a friend of mine from Egypt, and what he said was, listen, our goal when we come over there, because we're not thinking in that manner, right? We're thinking survival, and everybody wants to come up, so we align ourselves with whoever has the bag. And then I told him, right, but in Islam, we're warned against siding with tyrants for favors. And when I asked my friends from these countries about that concept, about siding with tyrants for favors, and I said, well, the most dangerous thing that could happen to America is for you guys to come over there en masse. Because the reason why America has what it has is because historically, both foreign and domestic, America's history is about standing up to tyranny and oppression. So the reason why your countries are messed up is because at one point somebody said, I'm going to let you slide with the bullshit because you're going to help me come up. So if you come to America, all you're going to do over time is turn it into where you came from because you're willing to let somebody slide with the bullshit so you could come up. So no, man, a lot of these groups have the same problems that we have. Again, drug abuse plagues Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nigeria. So those are the things that's happening in these places, man. Again, people are struggling economically because the governments are corrupt, right? And so again, and this is my problem. And have not studied our religion. And if you go into our religion, what the prophet, peace be upon you, will tell you about the people on this side of the earth, he said, without the religion of Islam, these are people that don't have any honor. They're like lizards in the desert. They will run into any hole where they can have shade. right? Which is why, so for example, at least for us, speaking from the Muslim world, which is why all the heroes, which is why Allah did it where all the heroes for justice in the modern age of Islam happen to be black. Make that make sense, right? But again, something like that is for those who ponder. Black Ma, salam alaikum, brother, and peace, man. And I have more to go, but like I said, I don't want to, I'll be able to sit down with you like on a panel and go blow for blow, country for country. Because that's the thing, Black Mind, I want to make this last point. Again, because of the nature of my work, there are websites where you can go and you can see what the United States government has spent in foreign aid to different countries, right? And then compare that amount of money to what Black America will see, right? So here is what Nigeria gets in foreign aid, broken down, and it's broken down into the total money per year, and then it's broken down to the NGOs and what products and services that they're offering to help Nigeria, Pakistan, or these other places develop. And then the question would be, and then compare that to the American tax dollar, where it goes to the black community, and make a comparison, and let's see what we come out with. That's something I can do. Maybe I'll go to BGS, because BGS loves doing stuff like that. I can do it, but I just don't have the love and passion for charts and numbers the way BGS does. So I'll bring this up to BGS, and then I'll, inshallah, perhaps we could come up with something groundbreaking the same way when BGS looked up the data about who's having kids and who isn't. Yeah, man, and that's what I'm saying. And so the same thing. So even here now, like in Nigeria, and I can't say for the Gulf, but like in Nigeria and Pakistan, you get out of wedlock births as well. So it's the same thing here. Like, so again, as you know, a lot of people from the Indo-Pak subcontinent, they have high numbers in the Gulf, and so you would have Pakistani girls, get pregnant, and, just like what black people used to do, right? The girl gets pregnant, you send her up to Chicago, and then she shows up later with the little brother or something like that. Well, guess what? They do the same exact thing. The girl gets pregnant, because also, too, we know in the GCC, you can't have a kid out of wedlock. So the girl gets pregnant, they send her home to Pakistan, and it's the same exact thing.